Jeremy, talk to me about recommendations for developers who are creating a lot of really cool things, apps and all these things that they're creating for us,
Yeah.
and where their mind should be when it comes to the security side of it, especially when they know their solution is going to need to have those API calls.
Yeah. First thing I would say is don't leave your security team in the dark. So first of all, lots of security starts with visibility. If you're a developer, you know you're building an API, you know that API is going to have some kind of critical data or sensitive data or critical transaction in it. Share information. Sharing is caring. Tell your security teams, hey, we've got this API. It's going to be online here. It's going to communicate with, these expected kind of third-party points, or maybe it's internal, but whatever. Let them know what the expected communication and traffic should look like around that. Let them know the function of the API, what it's designed to do. You don't need to go into the specifics of how the algorithm or the business logic processing works, but let them know the function, let them know the data. That way, when they're looking at just kind of observing it, they can see if things aren't looking like what you described. You can figure out proactively if there's some kind of problem with it. So that's number one. Two is do yourself a favor and build around an API framework that requires a specification. It's 2023. Pretty much every code language has an open source, widely available, widely used, widely documented API framework. And honestly, you're taking more of your time if you build the whole API scaffolding from scratch. So you probably don't want to do that. Go grab a framework, grab one of the proven, tested ones, and then make sure that you write a specification file for your API. That's going to do a little bit of what I described for the security team, but as code. It's going to kind of codify what the API is expecting to look like. Again, traffic, request parameters, payloads, etc. And then last but not least, do not equate authentication with authorization. Consistently over the last 10 years, and we've done the research on this, it's available on our website. We've got what we call an API data breach tracker. We have found that this kind of confusion between authentication and authorization has actually been the number one factor in the API data breaches that have been recorded. People make the assumption that if you're authenticated, you're also authorized. But guess what? I can take my authentication token, I can change the rest of my API request parameters and get your data with it, unless you are, again, checking for authorization post-authentication. So those would be my top recommendations for anybody, doing API development today.